into a rather lengthier section of this course, which is very, very important. And before we dive into the actual content, I just want to clarify a few things because I believe this is super important. So I've made like a small equation. Obviously, sales is not a rocket science. However, we can view it in this way for the sake of today's discussion. So obviously, we're here because we want results. And then on the right side of the equation, we have approach times mental attitude times repetition. For the approach, I'm a firm believer in the fact that the approach that you have doesn't influence your results that much. Naturally, having an approach is necessary, and it's always good to have something to have the best approach that works. However, let's put it this way. If you call, let's say, 100 people, you'll speak with 20, and out of those 20 people, maybe you'll be able to set up 5 meetings with them. The approach, no matter how you tweak it, will not yield you results beyond, I don't know, more than 5 meetings. How many more? You can spend hours or months trying to find a different approach, and maybe you'll go from 5 to 6 meetings or from 5 to 7. And here I like to make an argument for the fact that it's not time well spent, and the time spent trying to find the best approach could be spent by repeating, by making more calls, and so on. So, as I alluded before, there are so many styles and approaches in selling. You have spin, Sandler, whatever. I've mentioned all of them before, but it doesn't matter that much at the end of the day. This is a trap that most people fall into, and I don't want you to be making this mistake. I do it, everyone does it, but at the end of the day, we're going to be discussing about approaches that work for me in various industries, but I want you to be not that hang up on the subject of the approach or the actual technique aspect of sales. Moving on, what we have left is mental attitude and repetition. Repetition obviously is applying the approach to multiple people, and the mental attitude is what keeps you carry on and what ensures some form of continuity into this type of profession. So, again, mental attitude and repetition are the things that you need to install in yourself. And today we're going to be discussing about aspects of mental attitude. Today's session again is titled Soft Skills, which cover more or less aspects related to mental attitude and repetition. Those two are key, and you need to remember that. So again, mental attitude and repetition. Good. Now we can move forward. So the first thing that I like to mention here is charisma. Um, People, I think there's some form of preconceived notion because we have people that dream about, oh, I am this suave, charismatic individual. I can sell anything to anyone, which is very cool. You need to exude this trait to a certain extent. You need to have belief in yourself and so on. But at the end of the day, this doesn't help you that much in complex sales scenarios where you need more than a pretty face, if you know what I mean. So essentially, this may work better in B2C, or if you're maybe in multi-level marketing and you're trying to attract some form of customer, let's say, or maybe you're a fitness instructor or something and you need to be somewhat charismatic because you deal the transactions are not very complex. So yeah, I agree. However, if you're trying to sell in more B2C or more complex, in more B2B environments that are more complex, charisma is not something that you necessarily need. And to be honest, I don't think there's a way to develop it or not. Either you're born with it or without. Luckily, you don't need that much of it. And the only thing that charisma can help with is And maybe it's a curse, maybe it's not, but it's a tell that you work with people. Maybe you're a bit charismatic, and this is partly because you work with people. I even remember a few years ago being in an interview for I think it was a marketing position, and the HR person told me, "Hmm, I think you would be better in sales. You look like a salesperson. Would you like to have an interview for the sales role that we have here?" I said sure. And I swear, on the same interview for a marketing position, I was offered to another interview the same day at the same time for something totally different, which is interesting. But yeah, other than that, what I want to mention and what I've mentioned before is that sales is rather methodical. Charisma is really nice to have, but is definitely not required. And I can tell in my career so far, I've met a lot of people. I've met a lot of salespeople, and I say without a doubt that some people aren't charismatic at all, like zero charisma, and they were still fine. They were still putting a lot of meetings in the calendar, were closing deals, whatever. So luckily, it's not something that you need to have. And why I mention charisma if it's not important, I mention it because again, some people have this preconceived notion that you need to be some guru, some closing superstar, or having some magnetic personality, which doesn't even make sense. So if you think about yourself that you're not charismatic, but you still want to pursue a career in sales, or you're in sales but you feel discouraged about this, don't. It's not that relevant. So yeah, moving forward, empathy. This is a very interesting one, and it boils down to a few aspects. Basically, what empathy means is putting ourselves into the customer's shoes, or is basically trying to understand the perspective of the other person. Typically, some people in sales, they try to force people, or they try to leverage certain psychosomatic aspects. Basically, they want to push people into a corner, and they try to kind of force a sale. And I can give you an example. Let's say you have someone in real estate. Let's say the market is really bad, but they still find that one prospect, and they try to force him or her to purchase that home, even though it doesn't make sense financially to purchase that home at that price and so on. So there are some bad deals going on, and there are some people that would still force their customers into positions that are not advantageous for the customer and are only advantageous for the salesperson. I'm not your father, I'm not your mother, I'm not going to tell you what you do, but this is something that empathy, if you have it, and I recommend you to have it, is that it helps you be more ethical because one, you understand their perspective, and you can try to generate scenarios which are more win-win for both parties involved. And secondly, the second aspect of empathy, once you put yourself into your customer's shoes, you'll understand how they act in certain scenarios, and then you can make decisions and you can be better prepared. So for instance, I'll give you a very good example. So nowadays, people seem to run away from the phone. Our attention is diverted through multiple channels. Let's say we have a professional buyer. Let's say we have a CEO of a company. Typically, that CEO will be, I don't know, will be on LinkedIn. Will have his or her emails, and will have a lot of tasks and things to do. I don't want to say that they're busy and they don't have a few minutes, but at the end of the day, we need to understand their situation a bit. If if I send a message to that CEO, let's say through LinkedIn, the chances are he doesn't see it, or he sees it, or and he's busy, or something happens and he doesn't even spend that 1 or 2 minutes to dissect the message that you've sent to him. Because guess what? Another 100 salespeople are trying to message him, and he also has his responsibilities, and it's a mess. However, if you understand those variables, you can then say, okay, I'm going to message this guy on LinkedIn, and then maybe the next day I'm going to give him a call, and then the third day maybe I'm going to send him an email. And this is something that you need to learn. A few years ago or some time ago, trying to be as persistent as I've mentioned may have backfired on you. But nowadays, I think it's very important to be persistent, and you can only be persistent if it makes sense logically in your head. Okay, he or she didn't get my message, or he or she didn't have the time. So you need to push a bit, just enough to make sure that they get the message. So that's one thing about empathy. It makes you understand the other person's position, and then you can adjust accordingly. And again, I don't say be pushy because you need to be pushy for whatever reason. You need to be pushy because people are busy and they're bombarded with lots of messages from elsewhere. So that's just one example. So you need to notice and pay attention to what other people are doing, and you need to be interested and you need to ask questions to understand how they act and understand their triggers. So this is empathy. So to be more empathetic, it's very simple. You just need to listen. You need to ask questions. You need to listen, understand their perspective, and act accordingly. So if someone says they're upset with X, and they want to discuss about they need to find a solution to a problem that they're having, and if they mention something specific, it's best to focus on that particular aspect just to make sure everything is fine. And to so at the end of the day, this will help you get more sales just by putting yourself into the other person's shoes. So moving forward, this in this part of the course, we're going to be discussing about attitude. Attitude is what generates it's what actually not generates, it's what ensures a form of continuity. Sales is a game that has lots and lots and lots of ups and downs. Now you have success, now you don't, now you have it, now you don't. You can go through long periods of drought where you have no success whatsoever. You call hundreds of people and you have no success, or you go through hundreds of demos and people somehow don't close, nothing happens. So essentially, having the right attitude will prevent you from quitting. Sales is a numbers game to a certain extent, and doing the same thing and staying in the game long enough, being consistent enough, will help normalize those periods, and you'll get like a smooth result at the end of it. But you need to be consistent. So again, attitude is the one thing that ensures continuity. And the exact attitude may vary, but what I can say, the right attitude involves something like this. You need to have a can-do attitude, meaning if customer says something, "Ah, okay, I'll do it." If customer wants information on whatever, sure, I'll send the information. If 10 people, if you are working with other people, for instance, you need to show initiative. Let's say there's a B2B sales scenario where you have pre-sales involved, you have maybe a few other colleagues, and then on the other side you have lots of a few representatives from the other company. So you need to show initiative. Some people, I don't know, will not know how to react. You need to show initiative. You need to make sure that you need to take action. In sales, this is crucial. So you need to show initiative and you need to move fast. So if someone says, "Okay, I send me a proposal," or when it comes to be discussing about pricing, send an offer. Maybe not the same time, but send an offer. I don't know. Tomorrow, the next day, the latest, send an offer if someone requests it. And sure, some people say always send an offer because it may, sure. But yeah, this is just an example. So yeah, you need to show initiative, and then of course you need to say no where it makes sense. People always can always say or ask things of you. Okay, you're cold calling someone and they say, okay, send me an email. Maybe they're not interested, but this is not what I'm talking about. In general, you need to show initiative. You need to have an attitude that says I can do it, and this will make sure that you stay. This will help you stay in the game for longer and reap the benefits. Because if we go back to the first slide, we need repetition. We need to have the right focus, and then with the right approach, we get the best results. So this was the end of the section. Following up, we're going to be discussing more. But till then, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take care.